Happy Father's Day. I want to express my gratitude to all fathers who, with their wives, not only have generated life and faith, but who have daily made sacrifices for their children. Like St. Joseph, fathers are called to watch over, protect, defend, and provide for their families. In his letter to the Ephesians, St. Paul writes, "For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named." The letter to the Hebrews also refers to the fatherhood of God. God is portrayed as a father who sometimes has to discipline his children. He doesn't discipline them to harm them, but to help them to grow in holiness. St. John's Gospel mentions the father quite frequently and portrays the father as being a generous father. The father is generous with his glory, which he shares with us through his beloved Son. The father is generous in his work of healing, inasmuch as Jesus the Son heals on the Sabbath. As a work of the Father, he must be doing the works of the Father. The Father is generous with his protection, for the children of the Father will not be allowed to perish, it says in the 10th chapter where Jesus is speaking of the Good Shepherd. The Father is generous with his home. When Jesus reveals himself as the way, the truth, and the life to St. Thomas, he says that he will go to prepare a place for us, for in his Father's house there are many dwelling places. The Father is also generous with his joy. Among other things, Jesus says that anything we ask the Father in his name will be granted to us. The Father will give us the Spirit without measure if we ask him. And he offers us his only beloved Son that we might not perish but have life eternal. Yes, the image of God as Father is one of a generous Father. Pope Francis time and time again has emphasized the mercy of God. God is the merciful Father. Perhaps the most touching portrayal of the fatherhood of God can be found in Luke's Gospel in the 15th chapter, the story of the prodigal son, which is sometimes also called the story of the merciful Father. In 2013, Pope Francis said, "God does not forget us. The Father never abandons us. He is a patient Father, always waiting for us. He respects our freedom, but he remains faithful forever. And when we come back to him, he welcomes us like children into his house, for he never ceases, not for one instant, to wait for us with love. And his heart rejoices over every child who returns. He is celebrating because he is joy. God has this joy when one of us sinners goes to him and asks for forgiveness." I think we need to reflect on the fatherhood of God, for even today's gospel speaks of God's fatherhood. Are not 2 sparrows sold for a small coin? Yet not one of them falls to the ground without your Father's knowledge. Even all the hairs of your head are counted. So do not be afraid. You are worth more than many sparrows. Everyone who acknowledges me before others, I will acknowledge before my heavenly Father. Yes, the Father knows the hairs on our head. We are valuable and precious to him. God has not forgotten us. He loves us. He is not an angry, absentee Father, but a loving, merciful Father. And these qualities of God the Father should be reflected in human fatherhood. Yet we know human fathers are not perfect people. And still, though, I would encourage all fathers on this Father's Day to renew your commitment to imitating the fatherhood of God. I would encourage all parishioners watching this message to also help support fathers in their task of living vocations. When I was a child, my parents would only let us watch certain TV programs. One of them was Little House on the Prairie. Yet we all admired Charles Ingalls, played by Michael Landon. He was a father, he was a sensitive man, but he wanted to provide for his children, for his family, to do what was best for them. We also were allowed to watch the Waltons, and we could all relate to John Boy. He was the young guy, he didn't know much about the world, and he made a lot of mistakes. But his pa was a little bit wiser and could give him some advice. But the father was not always perfect either. He would also make some mistakes, but you could see him striving and struggling. Finally, there was the grandfather. He was the sort of the wisdom figure. He learned from experience, and he would be the steady hand. In those days, men and fathers were portrayed positively on TV. Later on, I would watch a show called Everybody Loves Raymond. And I laughed a lot. I mean, it's a hilarious show, and yet Ray and his brother Robert and the father Frank are all portrayed as fools. while there were these moments of sensitivity and growth, for the most part, the image of the father was largely ridiculed. Very subtly, we have become a society that no longer appreciates fatherhood. We wonder why so many of our children have problems, and a lot of times it's because of absentee fathers. We want to support our fathers in their vocation to fatherhood. If we want to have a strong parish and a strong church, then we need to have strong families. And that demands commitment on the part of fathers to the parish and support from the parish to fathers to be able to fulfill that commitment. Recently, I was going through some greeting cards, which I won at a bid and buy booth some years ago, and there are all kinds of greeting cards. I was going through them, and I found some Father's Day cards. And I thought to myself, I will never have the opportunity to send another one to my dad. This will be the first Father's Day without him. I learned so much about hard work, about protecting and defending human life, about the need to be humble and to accept responsibility for one's actions from my father. Above all, I learned from my father about the value of faith and how to love God, my family, my neighbor. On this Father's Day, if your father's still alive, take a moment to tell him what he means to you. Take a moment to thank God for him. And if your father has passed into eternity, pray for him and thank God for him. Whether he was perfect or imperfect, thank God for the lessons you learned for him. Finally, let us give thanks to the Father for the many blessings he has bestowed on us through his beloved Son, Jesus Christ. With St. Paul, we can say, "For this reason I bow my knees before the Father, from whom every family in heaven and on earth is named." To all fathers, I wish you a happy Father's Day. May God bless you.